Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. So I just have this topic or talk to to discuss with you guys, and it would be more of from my own experience and from me watching other designers as a product designer. So I titled it "Get Rid of Those Fictional User Personas." And yeah, so this title, you would see why I titled it this. There's a second part of the title which says synthesize like a pro, but just to shorten it, here it is. My name is Grace, Ademola-Adenle. I'm currently a senior product designer. I used to write codes once upon a time. So I bring in that perspective of being a software engineer into what I do. LinkedIn called me top voice in design. I've worked in different industries from fintech to healthcare to background check, which is basically security, logistics, and I'm currently working with Meta on a contract through Equant. They insist that I say it that way. So, but basically, I work with Meta at the moment. I'm actually trying to get into academia because of my personal interest in understanding perspective and basically questioning things. And sometimes when I'm introducing myself to people, when they ask me, "Oh, tell me about yourself," I usually say I am somebody that is very, very comfortable with questioning the status quo, and which is why I'm talking about this topic today. Yeah, because I love teaching. Okay, so why did I choose this topic? It's simply for one reason, which is to disabuse us of ineffective practices, one at a time. And um, and I'm also latching onto this tagline of UX healthcare, which is because better user experience can save lives. So, well, today I will be talking through certain points. First, we're just talking about what is even user persona. Um, Trying to look into a little bit to the the good parts of it, the bad parts in quotes of it. Why do people use it today? So what's wrong with it? How does it serve us right now as designers, and how does it serve our audience, our users as designers as well? What are alternatives to user personas, and I will hone in on tax analysis specifically, amongst several other great alternatives. Um, yeah, I'll round up with tips to creating better user definitions. So before I go into all of this, I want us to just look a little bit into who we are as user UX professionals, as user experience professionals. And I am proposing we do this to kind of remind ourselves of why we are doing what we are doing, and how our practices, our current practices and tools and processes, how all of these um, affect our work, how they also affect our audience. So, um, well, what we do as UX professionals is to basically consider the entire experience of a user or of users, including things like their emotional state, their context of use, which could be called like their environment where they experience the problem or where they would be using our solutions, and basically the design system or the artifact itself. So we consider all of these things together to create those great solutions. Now, our work as UX professionals is even much more becomes much more important, especially in the healthcare space where we are dealing with people's lives. And as you would see down in my presentation, I'm bringing in some practical examples of um, of how our decisions actually would affect regular people and even medical practitioners as well. So, another insight to why I'm actually talking about this topic is a personal experience. I just remembered I've not talked about that personal experience. So, late last year, that was I think December, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I at that time I began to question a lot of things because living here in the UK, I went to the hospital and I went through the whole process and all of the whole diagnosis, test and everything. And it was interesting because I was kind of going through the process as a user, but my professional mind could not help but dissect the process. And I realized that there are several types of people that come into these spaces, especially in healthcare, through I'm using the NHS now as an example. There are different people that interact with the system. And for us, now from a professional point of view, for us as UX designers or UX professionals, practitioners, to create effective solutions, our tools matter a lot. And personas is one of those major tools that we use a lot to serve our audience. And while when I went for this process, like I said, I was dissecting the whole process as a UX person. I realized that one of the stereotypes I noticed was most people when they hear, in short, this has been also with some friends and families that have this is an observation I also noticed with friends and family. When most people hear someone is diabetic, especially when not childhood diabetes, but when someone is diagnosed mid-age, like I am, people usually wonder, oh, you eat too much sugar. So that's one of the things, the characteristics that enter like someone's persona, such a person's persona. So for me, I realized I did not fit into the regular persona for a diabetic. So that person is older, much older. So the person probably 50s or 60s or maybe 40s, which I am not yet. Or the person is on the bigger side, has a high BMI, that is someone that is struggling with weight, or different personas. So when they're going to create a solution for somebody, or when you're going to interact with propose solutions for a diabetic, I found myself struggling to fit into most of the personas I saw out there. Okay, so our work as UX designers, as UX professionals, UX researchers, involves studying the user's realities through observations, just like I did, even though I was I was a user of this, or I am a user of this solution or out there for diabetic patients. But at the same time, um, we study users' realities through observation, and then also we study facts through data, whether already put out data by academics or previous research that has been done on previous patients. And I'm trying to bring all of my talk today to be more specific to the healthcare sector. Okay, so we also, this is the other part of what we do, which is to prefer or create solutions that are based on research and, of course, data. So not all the time are we able to actually prefer solutions. Sometimes our work may stop at studying the problem, understanding the situation around the problem. We like to offer solutions all of the time, but unfortunately, there are some times, especially depending on the organization, depending on the situation, you might not get to the point of actually preferring solutions. That's why I separated those. So now on to what is a user persona itself? What exactly is this user persona thing? And yesterday in one of the talks, one of the speakers actually made reference to this. And according to IDF, that's Interaction Design Foundation, I think, they defined personas as fictional characters created to represent different user types that might use a service, a product, site, or brand in a similar way. So this is bunching different kind of users that might use a particular product or service in a certain way. So the another definition I saw said a user persona is a semi-fictional character created to represent different customer types that use a company's products or services. So which begs the question, what exactly is wrong with user personas? They are widely used tools to help us create efficient solutions. So so what's wrong with user personas? So as a matter of fact, before I go too deep into what's wrong with user personas, I would just like to take us a little bit back to even the definition. And I think I saw a comment about where the bodies are buried. Okay, that's about academia. So I think what is wrong with user personas is in the definition of user personas on its own, which is fictional. That right there is the big problem I find with user personas. So, and these two definitions that I took at random from the internet still have those words, fictional. I think the first time I started questioning the point of user personas, two things made me question it in my own professional experience over the past 7 years. The first thing that made me question this was the definition, of course. I mean, because I like teaching, so I used to teach user personas. I used to teach how to create personas and all of these things. And then I started questioning it, like, why are we as UX professionals, which is why I took us to what we do as, I took us a step back to what we do as UX professionals. Why are we as UX professionals dealing in the fictional? I mean, so that's the first thing. The second thing that made me think that something might be wrong with this tool, or maybe the way we use it, let me say that way, the way we widely use user personas, is the fact that a lot of things are put into the user personas, which is like the research data. Like it's more like garbage in, a lot of garbage in, right? However, the garbage out is not comparable. And I will still touch on this shortly. Most of the time, what we create are proto personas, not really personas. So I would not 100% say that personas are useless, but I would say that most of the personas we find out there, and I think I have 1 or 2 screenshots to show you that I picked again at random, most of them are not really useful when it comes to making design decisions, when it comes to creating solutions. And so we have proto personas, which are more of fake personas. I think that's the actual word. Proto personas basically means description of target users based on assumptions of stakeholders. So this is where the CEOs, the internal stakeholders, people that think they understand the problem, come together in a room called stakeholders and come up with assumptions about the target users and basically come up with what they call persona. So this type of personas that are being used most of the time is mostly fictional. Now, yeah, mostly fictional. That's the first thing I find wrong with it. They are vague, right? We find a lot of demographics information, which is good on its own because it helps us to understand the user. I will still come to the good part of this, but they are vague. They are not very clear when it comes to understanding the users. They are mostly full of assumptions. Again, you see this in the example I'm going to show shortly. We have a lot of assumptions. Also, they are ineffective at best, but but usually stereotypical. Like the example of my own personal example as a diabetic, I realized that the personas I found out there were mostly stereotypical. I think more importantly, these user personas describe the person. They describe the characteristics of the person rather than the person's characters. And what I mean by characters are more like what I in this presentation call task or hats or roles. So I compare how we should deal with this as an actor, right? An actor taking different roles at different times. So rather than describing just the person, we ought to describe the characters, but I'll come to that. So the last thing I have noted here about user personas is that they do not target any specific problem or give insights to a user carrying out task. We have them talking about the setting, yes, the context of the users to a particular to an extent, but they don't really target the actual problem that the user is experiencing, especially when it comes to doing that thing they said they are frustrated with doing. This is an example that I pulled off UX Planet's site, and this is meant to be for a particular I think this was for a 30-something. This one I'm showing now was for a 33-year-old mother to to a girl, Chloe. I am reading off what they put on their site right now, who is bringing Chloe, as her daughter, in because she's worried about her temperature and she's not playing as much. That is the definition of this persona we're looking at right now, which documents our goals. We have a nice looking picture there. We have a name, demographics at the bottom. Okay. Goals in the middle, which is she wants her family to be healthy and fit. She wants health optimized for all members. Wants to raise kids that have the best opportunities, wants a safe and happy environment, and so on. Her challenges, which are more like frustrations, are she's so busy, she doesn't have enough time, and on and on. Relationship with technology, really good. Habits, okay. Online shopping, exercises regularly, catches up with girlfriends, and so on and so forth. And a lot of input has gone into this. A lot of information from the research that has been carried out. We have like these goals that have been documented here, of course, should ideally have come from research and all of these things, really. However, how exactly does this help us to create a solution to the problem that she's facing? How is she experiencing this problem? I mean, what are the specifics? We say that according to what was documented on where I pulled this from, it says that the context to this is that she has, a daughter has issues with, she's running temperature and then like basically stuff like that. So health issues. So how exactly does this person inform our decision? I'm not saying it's totally useless. I mean, of course, there's some data we can pull out from this to give us context. At the very least, we know the devices to create our designs for, right? We understand our context, we understand the general frustrations, but how do we drill this into solutions? This second one here is basically the second part of this, which is like another person, an older woman, and this is an 83-year-old woman that's been admitted for a particular illness in the hospital, and so she doesn't want to be in the hospital, from what I can see on that goals. She wants to remain independent at home. She wants to be able to self-manage her health. These are insightful, yes, but is it insightful enough for us to solve whatever problem it is? Are we even clear on the problem looking at this? And I wouldn't have too much problem with user personas if only after creating this, you'd still go ahead to do some more work. But unfortunately, in my experience, several years of experience, many times we do not even take the time in the in the professional space, we do not take the time to do more research work. Okay, after we've done this, do we go back to find out some more stuff, maybe some things that were not very clear? Do we break this down into user journeys? Do we break this down into task analysis? Do we go ahead to maybe, I don't know, different other tools? Many times we don't really do all of this. We stop here, which I would say is not effective enough. Now this is the good part, right? Which I've already touched on a bit. How exactly do personas serve our users? They serve our users, I mean, in some ways. They drive our designs in some good ways, one of which is it helps us to promote empathy. We understand, like the one we just looked at, we actually understand the context, we understand the frustration. So I am not saying it doesn't have its place. It also gives insights into users' emotional experience, and then demographic info, of course, general circumstances. So those are some things that user persona helps us as designers to do. It gives us insights into these things when it comes to like the user's point of view. But my question is this enough for us to stick to user personas as the as user definition, as a definition of our target audience? All of my whole presentation today is just to make us question certain processes and certain things we do, especially for us that are in the industry at the moment. My short answer, I think no. Garbage in should be at greater than or equal to, let me say, okay, so I think I have this written wrong. I meant garbage out should be greater than or equals to garbage in. What goes into a system? I mean, when you want to say investment is worth it, the return on the investment should be at least greater than the investment in it. When I look at most types of user personas I see in the industry, it's almost not worth it. At least I'm wondering, where are we going with this? So things like the patient lives in a 2-bedroom house, okay, or that they have a particular personality trait, or that they are 60% extroverted. All these kind of things. Exactly how does this help us to design a system that automates the work of, say, a healthcare assistant who helps patients in their homes? I have some friends that do this kind of that do this work of healthcare assistants, and I wonder if we have such a person, and how does it help us to create a system that would solve some of the issues they are facing? Like I've said a couple of times, most personal information is not very useful when it comes to influencing design processes or design decisions. So after all said and done, after everything I've said, where do we go from here? So if we're not going to use user personas, or if we are not going to rely 100% on personas as a source of truth to creating good designs, where do we go from here? There are different other alternatives or different other tools that could be used in conjunction, as if we still want to use it for whatever reason. One of which is task analysis. There are jobs to be done, user stories, empathy maps, user cards. There's so many, actually, many of them. Now, I am not saying these are perfect tools. I'm not saying they're perfect tools, but one thing I have found when it comes to tools like especially task analysis is that it actually helps us get the work done. It actually helps us create the useful design. So imagine if only we use one of these other tools in association with user personas, if we want to. Imagine how much more useful this would be. So task analysis is the one that I'm going to just like drill in a bit more on, and it just says basically the study of how a user completes her task to achieve goals. So yeah, that's just breaking down the task that a particular user uses to do whatever it is she wants to do. For instance, the person we looked at earlier, she wants a healthy home. She wants her children to be healthy. She wants members of her family to be healthy, which is her goal. but what are the things she's currently doing? So studying what she's currently doing, studying what she should be doing, which is something I'm going to come to. Those are things that should be clearly documented. And I took this from an group. They broke this down to say task analysis is something like a user forms a goal, has a couple of tasks, and then the goal is achieved in the end. So that's one user, her goal, and then how she carries out her task. So my video is acting up. Okay, let me switch to my, 1 second, please. Okay, switch to my other camera. Okay, so basically we have I would like us to think more actors and characters rather than personas. And what I mean by that, I think I've mentioned this earlier, is like an actor, for instance, Idris Elba. I like Idris Elba, so I'm using him as an example. An actor could, in the same movie, act different characters, or in different movies act different things. So today could be called something, and then in another movie be called something, or even in different scenes could be called different things. So one actor basically acts as different characters, and then one character, in this case, under the setting of task analysis, has one task. So for instance, if an actor is to act a particular kind of role, that person is going to be doing one thing. The focus is to sell us the character of that particular actor at that time. So an example here is, say, first character saying that this person's experience in administering medications, and then, okay, but the same person is still learning how to help patients move around. So I'm using a carer right now as an example, someone that goes to people's homes to take care of them. I think it would be inaccurate of us to bunch together like those titles that are put on top of personas to say this is an experienced or expert caregiver, because they're not actually experienced, but yes, they're experienced in administering the medications, but not really in the other one, because they had so many tasks that come together to basically to make someone who they are, or to say the person has achieved their goal. The second example, the other example I have here is the first character saying, okay, so this person is great with using social media, but she's learning how to impute data using Excel. But then we call this person a tech-savvy nurse. Is that really true? This is what we see when we see most personas. We have so many things bunched together that it doesn't accurately reflect the reality. So let me just break this down a bit. For an example, so some things that make up a task analysis, the first thing is the actual task. So what is the task of this person? This is just an example that I put together for this presentation, so it doesn't 100% represent what's happening out there. So for instance, a carer might say, oh, my task is to administer medications to my patients. So that's my task. That's one of my tasks, right? What's my trigger? I have delicate patients and I don't want to hurt them unintentionally. So that could be the motivation. What's the desired outcome? Well, patients are well taken care of, hopefully. Now, this is the more important part of the task analysis. That is where the knowledge comes in. What's the base knowledge and what's the required knowledge? So base knowledge is what the caregiver knows right now, how to administer medications, right? What's the required knowledge? So this is knowledge that the carer should know, but probably would not know. So probably may even never know, right? For instance, how medicine interacts with each other. So if somebody is supposed to give a patient is supposed to have 3 medications in the morning, and but the carer does not know how they interact, but the patient has been given the instructions on how to use the medications. Now, how do they how does the carer use the information that they probably do not know, because that's not really their job to know. It's the doctor's job to know, but the doctor is not physically there right now. How medicine interacts with each other. So that's something that's one of the knowledge that I would say that a carer in this case should know, knowledge that they should have, they need, but they just don't have the knowledge, right? So something that could come out of this particular one could be an idea to create a system that will have a feature to be able to track interaction of drugs that have been prescribed to a patient, maybe to even alert the carer or the nurse or whoever of possible drug interactions. So this is how a task analysis might be more helpful as opposed to user personas, which is more popular. Tax artifacts, that's something else to document, which would be like the email communications. Okay, doctor's notes. That's basically how do they carry out their tax right now without whatever it is we are proposing or whatever it is that we want to do for them. Then state of mind. I would assume it depends on the carer. They might be relaxed if they get to the house in time, or they might be rushed, maybe trying to rush for the next appointment, for the next patient. It depends. So those are things to document. So these are 7 major things that needs to be documented in a task analysis. And then there are other things that come into this, things like frequency. How often does this happen? Do they work alone or do they work with a team? From what I've learned, many times, medical professionals work with a team. So the context of it is different, but sometimes they have to work alone. So these are some things that come together to creating better or more effective solution, especially for the healthcare system. I'm actually wrapping up already. My presentation is shorter than I thought, which is good. Tips. This just summarizes a lot of things that I have noticed and a lot of things that I've already said. One of which is that we need to actually seek out knowledge, not just sit in our pretty offices guessing stuff in the form of proto-personas. And as ridiculous as it sounds, me saying it here, I have seen this a whole lot in different with different companies, where we assume things on behalf of the people that we are creating this solution for, or solving problem for. It might never be to create solution, but solving a problem for. And I think it is much more dicey when we are dealing with the health of people. And I think it could even border on being dangerous if we are relying on just our head knowledge. So preferably observational or contextual inquiries, interviews, basically no guess games, as much as possible. So documenting the observed frustrations and the context of use of each task, which is what I've kind of broken down with a caregiver. And then this is a part that I was trying to hone in on, major on, which is checking for the knowledge gap. So we need to know required knowledge. Apologies. So we need to be able to check for what required knowledge is in each task. So like a particular person might, like the example I gave, a nurse or a caregiver might have the knowledge, will actually have the knowledge. A good one should have the knowledge of how to administer medications to patients, but might just not know the interactions of different drugs. So documenting the knowledge differences or the knowledge gap will help us. In short, in things like even using particular icons to communicate to a regular person. I mean, let's say a 50 or 60-year-old patient, maybe they're an app that they needed to use, but using some complex stuff, you need to be able to understand the knowledge gap. So documenting this for each user is important. And then in cases where we already have designs, it's good to actually focus on tasks rather than just putting together stuff. Like I said, it might sound ridiculous, but I see this a lot. I see the good part. I see us doing good things, but this is one of those things that needs a call out. And so I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Yeah, thank you for your time. And any questions?
Hey, Grace, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I see Clarissa, I think it was more of a comment than what it was a question.
Yeah.
It seems like the interpretations of user personas is the problem rather than properly done user personas, i.e. data-driven. Unfortunately, in educational settings, they're taught personas are things you make up or cards you can buy to give your prompt for designs. I experienced this in my master's.
Yes, yes. It's something that, yeah, I experienced it in educational space, but the worst of it is in the industry, especially when we are crunched for time. I see it a lot where people just go ahead to we just come up with stuff. Really, we come up with stuff. We do miniature research. We do just face value research, and go ahead to build personas and use that to design. Yeah.
Totally. We found that in one of our projects as well, where someone just came in, put the big AO size whiteboard up and tell us about your clients. Okay. Look, I think we're good to go. If there's any more questions, thank you so much, Grace. Really appreciate your time and effort
Thank
as
you.
well.